Hey, welcome back to Splash Page. I am Andrew, and with me is Sean. And we're here to talk about the last three episodes, the finale of season 2 of The Legend of Vox Machina. Sean, first thoughts?
Yeah, it was a great block of episodes. I think the whole time we were looking at this 12 episode season and the pacing and going, there's no way we're getting kind of story finale. So we kind of got to a nice cliffhanger, and now we have to wait a year. But these three episodes were a lot of fun. I think, again, it was a ramp up from probably 10 being the worst episode and 12 being the best of this block. But, you know, when you get three at a time, you're allowed to make a story build.
I fully agree with that, to be honest. And yeah, each kind of set of three was a little bit of a ramp up, which is a nice way to send out episodes. Just keep that in mind, Netflix.
Yeah.
Send them out in chunks, build the story over time, let us think about it, digest. But let's discuss Vox Machina and their attack on Umbrasil, the Hope Devourer. Alright, so we start this episode 10, we're going to start this chunk, and half of our team just arrives back from the Feywild to where they thought Whitestone was, and they do find it, but it's been hidden by magical enchantments from Gilmore and Allura. They hid the entire town of Whitestone behind a kind of a force field there.
Yeah, it's an impressive set of skills.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what that would take if you were actually playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons, and it seems like an OP moment there. So happy that it's like a non-playable character that just is strong enough to do that, because
I have no proof of this, but I feel it was Matt Mercer's way of keeping them out of the battle.
Right,
to stop them from just going, hey, you guys are here,
plot element.
Come with us. Mm-hmm. You guys got powers, fight the dragon with us. But they do some planning, and Allura is able to find where Grog, Pike, and Scanlan are out in Western by the half-giants. They see Grog approaching, and they're surprised to see him all skinny and not hiding. And that's where this episode really begins, and really this whole chunk begins, with Grog confronting his Uncle Kevdak at the half-giant camp.
The moment from earlier episodes where Grog is essentially pulled aside by some old dude and beat up several times.
Earthbreaker Groon.
Yeah, and asked where his power comes from or where his strength comes from. It ends up, I guess, it's friendship.
Yes.
And once he sees poor little Pike getting stepped on, he returns to kind of full strength Grog.
Yes, well, he's able to rage again, and I like that it was Pike that forced him into it, because the thing that turned him from the herd in the first place was Pike's great-great-grandfather, mm-hmm. So it was still the Trickfoot family line. And it makes a lot of sense in a game of Dungeons & Dragons for your strength to come from your friends, and in the game it was this like uplifting moment. They did their best in the show. It felt a little shoehorned to me, but it did feel like they did all they could with what they had, and I did like that.
Yeah, I think the better moment actually was Grog is then under Kevdak's boot and looking up and notices that he sees Vax and Vex and Percy, Keyleth all kind of like hopping over the rooftops to help out. And I think that was kind of the more heartfelt moment where he basically says it again, and then there's an all-out war between the half-giants and Vox Machina.
I did like the setup because Kevdak beats the crap out of Grog. Grog finds his strength in his friends and is able to rage. And then Kevdak uses his knuckles to get even larger and beat the crap out of Grog some more until his friends do show up to save the day. Yeah, that was fun. That was a good setup. And we did get to see Grog go into the necklace as he's wanted to since it appeared and fall out of the sky and slash Kevdak in half.
Yeah, and for those who have read the comic Invincible, and if you haven't, I'm sure we're going to end up seeing it at some time at this point. I was going to say that Kevdak's death is a very invincible death.
Okay.
Because of just what's left of him after the fight. And for anyone who knows Invincible, I'm sure I'll get a smile out of that. And for anyone who doesn't, just wait.
Yeah, and that was, I guess it's hard to tell theater of the mind, but I feel like this was slightly more gruesome than the gameplay version. but most everything is when you get to see it in real life.
Yeah, and they don't hold back on animating the
Yeah,
blood and the bones
yeah.
and the guts
Which
and
is also
everything
very
like that.
Invincible like. Yeah.
Yes, very
So
true.
Grog finally gains the respect back from his herd. They have kind of a decompression night where they just drink and dance. Scanlan and Kaylee play their masturbation song with the band, and they drink and get drunk and be merry. And at dawn, they plan, which was a fun moment from the game too. So many of those weird, iconic lines that came in the moment that they were able to script into this. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and Scanlan's has his own kind of plot line going on in these next two episodes based on him and Kaylee going away from the rest of the group, where he finds out a pretty significant piece of information that he's a father
Yes,
and father of
yes,
Kaylee.
he is. That was an intense moment right there, and he finds out nude tied to a bed, as you do.
Right. As one's known to have, as known
Yeah,
to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Yeah, so is that an element of the stream as well? He
It
meets his daughter.
absolutely was. And I was flipping back and forth to some of the old episodes today and yesterday and remembering how much Sam, who plays Scanlan, was having fun with that character. He was just the flirting with everyone, making dick jokes all over the place. Like he was the silly craziness of it all. And I think Matt Mercer invented that storyline just to kind of teach him a lesson a little bit because there was no one he wouldn't hit on in the game. So he's like, all right, well, it's going to come to this then. You've slept with everyone. You will have a daughter out there and you're going to try to sleep with her. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
And
hilarious.
weirdly, that became a big turning point in his character because he, like you can see in the show, he gets a
Mm,
little more serious. He's like, oh, this isn't all just fun and games. Some of it's actual real life.
gotcha. Yeah. Although it's Dungeons and Dragons, so
Well,
it is
yeah,
all
it's
fun and games.
literally
But I
fun and
get
games.
you. But one other thing I noticed during this moment, particularly the party that's happening, is you see Caliph going over to talk to
Right.
Vax, and Vax is kind of dealing with what's going on with the Matron of Death, and kind of turns Caliph away. And not so much even on that relationship, but I'm starting to notice that they are kind of building more romantic relationships between a lot of the characters. So Caliph and Vex, Vax and Percy, and then even Pike and Scanlan are starting to have some moments
Yeah.
together. And I was just curious, in the stream, do they have a similar kind of like building up and breaking down of romantic relationships
I
between
think
the
it was a
characters?
little more straightforward in the stream, but I think for the show they're doing a little bit of a Sam and Diane will they won't they thing. But in the stream it was mostly
Mm-hmm.
Vax just trying to get to Keyleth the whole time and her kind of backing off a little bit until it, worked out. Vex and Percy also kind of had a little bit of a fling, which I believe started about the time where Percy stood up for her and gave her a title. And
Mm-hmm.
Scanlan was just hitting on Pike the entire time, and she
Right.
was
Yeah.
playing it off and backing off the entire time, but never saying no, but definitely not saying yes. But there was a flirtatious back and forth there as well. And Grog,
Gotcha.
being
Okay.
the big dumb character he was the only one that wasn't trying to sleep with another member of the team. They really were like the Mamas and the Papas, or one of those bands where they just travel around and sleep with each other. The fun part of that was watching Liam O'Brien hit on Matt Mercer, the DM's wife, who was playing Keyleth.
Right. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
you telling me that. That's
Let's
crazy.
jump to. So we had that fight with the half giants going on. We plan for the big dragon attack, and Percy is kind of getting ready to plan for the. I love watching Percy plan because he is a tinkerer, he is a planner, and especially in the show here, watching him over explain to a group of brain dead idiots about the theories of physics, and then Grog having to explain it to them. You all dig here. And before we get to the dragon, we also had our Vax moment where he visits the Matron of Raven's temple.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed, and I apologize if I brought this up before, but there's this kind of yellow line
Yes.
that comes out, or maybe it's gold, and it comes out, and it's actually been in the opening credits, I think since the show had begun. And I never really understood what that was, but we find out that that's the thread of fate, or
Yeah,
the
it's kind of
threads
a
of fate.
representation of fate and destiny. So finally, just before the dragon fight, Grog's cousin Zanror gives him Blood Axe. Grog makes sure that the axe doesn't talk to him and takes his new weapon. And we wait for Umbrasyl to stop by and start a battle. We get Percy's trap set up with all the gold laid upon it so that he could step onto it. And Umbrasyl actually notices the trap, and we have Vex kind of shooting the target to trap him in there. And like Grog said, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, it was a cool trap, and their strategy certainly made sense. But Umbersol's kind of like has every power possible. So, the impenetrable skin, the acid breath, and then he also was able to turn invisible and heal himself and all these things. So it
Yeah.
doesn't go as well as they had assumed it would in the beginning, even though they were really,
No.
full on attack. And
I believe it was at that moment that he says, "You can't hit what you can't see," and it reminded me of Grog fighting Silas on Briarwood when he just closed his eyes and it started swinging. And he's like, "If I don't know where I'm swinging, you won't know where I'm swinging." It's the opposite of that
yeah,
scene.
well, it kind of makes sense, I guess. The the thing that the second this happened, I was like, I have to talk to Andrew about it. The way they were able to keep Umbrasyl in position for longer once he breaks through the ropes and the trap is that Scanlan and Vax use Scanlan's hand and, let's say, fly into the exit of the
let's
dragon.
let's call it what it is. They finger their way into the dragon.
Yeah. And they place that immovable sword inside of the dragon. So I have to ask, did they go inside of the dragon in the stream?
They did.
What?
There were a lot of similarities. It was not exact. They did not have an immovable sword. They had an immovable rod. They did not go in through the exit. They went in through Dimension Door.
Ah, okay.
They did get split up inside of the dragon and couldn't see each other for a while. And at one point, Vax did believe he was in the dragon's anus. He was not, though. But for some reason, in my mind, I thought that he was. Like, in my mind, that was the story even before the cartoon came out.
Yeah, in the beginning of episode 12, we have the dragon flying away with Scanlan and Vax still inside, Grog holding onto a rope outside of it, and
Yep.
the rest of the
Yep.
the rest of the group following. And
Chasing.
one of my favorite, I think, ever scenes in Vox Machina is it begins with them inside of Umbrasyl, and it kind of like zooms out to like put you into the context of where we are, and it goes through Umbrasyl's anus to be back on the outside, and I was like, that's brilliant.
We've gone insane. It very much reminiscent of the Boys
Yeah,
season 3
I know.
beginning episode. Yeah, we've gone nuts here. This is a group of adults who did not write this for a show. They wrote this in real time with themselves playing a game for themselves.
It's very funny. Very well done. So from there, Umbrasyl goes back to his den, his lair, whatever it may be. You definitely
Right.
get a dissension from Umbrasyl toward the rest of the conclave. How does that kind of fit with what you know from the stream itself?
Well, it feels like and again, how much of this did we go into the Dragon's backstory? We don't follow them in the streams. I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes when Vox Machina is
Right.
adventuring. But, he didn't have the vestiges in the game. That wasn't even an option that the dragons could steal the vestiges back. That wasn't on his mind. I think he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, first dragon they chose to go after kind of thing. He was subservient to Thordak. Thordak is their leader. And he was trying to get him his gold. But, they're all dragons, and it's, like they said in the first episode of the season, it's strange for dragons to work together in the first place. This whole situation is bizarre. But they sneak in, and Vax does sneak in like he did in the stream, and the team follows him in, and they got a big dragon fight. I'm not going to go point by point through this fight because that's way too in-depth for this video. But they generally defeat a dragon through the power of Scanlan realizing that I guess his strength comes from his friends too. He needed to prove himself to Kaylee even if she never finds out about it. And he had to go back and help save his friends in a really badass moment that I was afraid wasn't going to come. I was like thinking of the time left in the episode, and I'm like, they're not even going to kill this dragon this season.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty cool.
And so he takes Mythcarver, the vestige, away from Umbrasyl and stabs the dragon through the eye, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I have another question around the vestiges as well, because we see that Vax has a lot of, let's call them conversations or or kind of space outs to talk to his matron. And when they're falling, he goes in, learns about some stuff, and he comes out and he has wings because of the armor or whatever it is that he has.
Yes.
He's able to kind of fly around and catch Scanlan. And there's actually a scene that basically takes shot for shot or animation for animation the opening of the credits where that crow kind of flies and turns, and they use it in this episode. I was just curious, so by Vax doing that, has he made any kind of additional promises here or anything with the matron, or is this kind of all what is expected of him?
All of the vestiges start off, or not necessarily start off depending on when they got them in the stream, but they all theoretically start out dormant and then they become awakened and then exalted based on how much effort and time you've put into it and how much you've given yourself over. Basically on an experience level in the game, they would eventually gain new effects, each of them. So the wings were I believe in the game they're an awakened version, but once they've codified it, it might be exalted. But basically, each of their vestiges have levels where they get more and more powerful as they are used.
Gotcha.
And as you put your blood, sweat, and tears into them, kind of idea.
Mm-hmm. And then we'd assume the episode's over, right? We killed the dragon. We, looking at runtime, it's probably a minute or two remaining. Maybe we get some silly joke or something. But we go back to Whitestone. And everyone's having a little glass of wine and talking about what we should do next. And then, Andrew, what happens here? Because I don't remember this character. I'm not quite sure what's happening. It's a dragon, it's a person, it's a lady that we've seen for a while. So what are we watching here?
That woman was Keeper Yenin, who was helping them usher in through the trees. She was always standing there when they came in. She helped them defeat the Briarwoods. And now it seems her form has been taken over by, let's say, a dragon with green eyes whose name is Raishan.
So could that be the little girl from the episode that Grog... What'd you say?
That was 100% that little green-eyed girl.
All right.
In my mind, that was 100% that green-eyed girl. It had to be.
And so who is this dragon? Where have we seen them before?
There were 5 dragons of the Chroma Conclave. We've defeated Brimscythe in Season 1. We've just defeated Umbrasyl. And this is Raishan, the Diseased Deceiver. They were in the beginning flying around with Thordak and with Voragel, the Frigid Doom. They're part of the Conclave, and that was the other poisonous one, not the acid one.
Got it. Yeah, because up until this final episode, I don't think we had seen the Ice Dragon or the Disease Dragon, basically since like the first couple episodes. So that kind of makes sense why they kept them both out of our review. So we're not like, isn't there another dragon? It's kind of just like, the other two were off doing their duty as well. So I like that. That's very cool.
Yeah, there is a backstory with Raishan and with Thordak and how that came to be and how the Conclave started. And this video is getting a little long and bloated as it is, but I feel like maybe we could do another video. We could discuss how the Conclave began and Raishan's place in it, as well as Umbrasyl's and Thordak, and how that all came together.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great video. And then just the final piece, Thordak is making an army. what's in the eggs? Is it more dragons? Is it some
I
kind
had
of...
to go back and look, but I believe through some twist of physiology, Thordak is now able to procreate asexually, and I believe those are dragon eggs.
Wow. All
That
right.
I guess they need gold to hatch.
Awesome. Well, season 2 of Vox Machina did not disappoint
Yeah.
in two ways. One, it was very good, and two, it came out just a year after the first season. So both of those things give it two very enthusiastic thumbs up.
These guys are content providers, my man. I just found out today that Anna Ripley, who's been egging on Umbrasyl until he died just now, she's getting her own backstory book coming out before the next season. So
That's great.
we can learn more about her eventually too, outside of what happened in the game, because they've added her in a lot more into the show than she was even in the game at this point.
Gotcha. Well, very nice.
And that's it for The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. The legend continues next year or so in Season 3. Until then, I'm Andrew. That's Sean. We'll see you next time.
Take it easy, YouTube.